Hi, hello, good afternoon everyone. I'm Dr. Harika Kishore. On behalf of Vista Learning, I'm here as your biology educator. vlearning, it's an online education platform which works with an ideology of providing quality education for all. Visit our website www.v-learning.in where you are going to get an access for all the live classes, recorded sessions, study materials and concept videos, as well as you are going to get this lecture notes in the form of PDFs. And make sure you get your acquaintance with all the channels available and subscribe to the channel Vista's Learning Class 11 and 12. If you find this session interesting and informative, click on the like and share this session with your friends. And also don't forget to hit the notification, that is the bell icon, so that you are going to get all the notifications, right? Saying that, let's start our present session. Now, so here in this session, we are going to start up with a new chapter, and that is called as ecosystem, which comes under the unit ecology. So let's start. What is this ecosystem? As we already know, ecosystem is a functional unit of the nature. It itself is a functional unit of the nature. Some of the ecologists consider the whole biosphere as a global ecosystem, and it composes of different types of ecosystem, which ranges from a very small pond ecosystem to large sea, ocean, forest ecosystems. Forest ecosystem. So it is very difficult to take it as a whole. So for our convenience, we are dividing this ecosystem into two different types of ecosystems, like terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. To that matter, we can conveniently divide these ecosystems into natural ecosystems and artificial ecosystems, where natural ecosystems are the type of the ecosystem which are formed naturally and can be maintained by its own, whereas artificial ecosystems are man-made, like gardens, orchid farms, croplands, aquariums. These are all comes under artificially made. That artificial is nothing but man-made ecosystems. It's not naturally formed, but they are man-made. And coming to the natural ecosystem, where it is again can be divided into terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystems. So as it is very difficult to understand, for our convenience, we are understanding at a smaller level by taking an example of pond ecosystem, because pond ecosystem by itself is consisting of all the sustainable things in the form of both biotic factors as well as abiotic factors. We know that the components of the ecosystem are biotic factors and abiotic factors. So this ecosystem is a functional unit of the nature which interferes with the biotic factors and which interferes among themselves, and as well as it interferes with the abiotic factors, right? So here ecosystem is too much big on its own. So therefore, and it is also very, very complex to understand, to be studied at once. That is what we are. For our convenience, it is divided into two basic categories. And we have been divided it into different categories based on whether it is made naturally or man-made. So under natural ecosystem, we can see terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystem. It is basically divided into two categories. One is terrestrial ecosystem and other one is aquatic ecosystem. So under terrestrial ecosystem, we can find deserts, grasslands. These are all like terrestrial ecosystems, and also forest ecosystems. If you come to the aquatic ecosystem, where we can see like lakes, rivers, seas, these are all comes under aquatic ecosystem. Let's understand. So here, forest ecosystem grassland ecosystem and desert ecosystems. These are some of the examples which comes under terrestrial ecosystems. These are all terrestrial ecosystems. Now, coming to aquatic ecosystems, ponds, lake, wet water, marine, river, estuarians, these are all comes under water, that is aquatic ecosystem. And the man-made, what we call it as an artificial ecosystem. Both terrestrial ecosystems as well as aquatic ecosystems comes under natural ecosystem. And the crop fields, gardens, arcades, aquariums, these are all some of the examples which comes under man-made, what we call it as an artificial ecosystems. Right? Now, so here we always, ecology is a study of interaction between the components of the ecosystem. Components of ecosystem, nothing but abiotic factors and biotic factors. Biotic factors are living organisms, whereas the abiotic factors like non-living things, like which includes water, light, temperature, soil, rocks, these are all abiotic factors. There is an interaction between one biotic factor and another biotic factor. That means it interacts among itself, and also the biotic factor shows its interaction with an abiotic factors too. Right. Now, the interaction of biotic, what we call it as a living, right, and abiotic, A means absent, that is non-living. Non-living components result in a physical structure that is characteristic of each and every type of ecosystem, no matter what type, whether it is a terrestrial type of ecosystem or aquatic type of ecosystem. In every type of ecosystem, we do find the interaction between living and non-living. That means biotic as well as abiotic components. Now, identifying what are they? Producers are herbivores, are carnivores, are consumers, and counting, enumeration, how many? Identifying and counting of the plants as well as animal species which are present in a particular ecosystem, that will give you a species composition. If you identify and number it, name it and number it, identify it and enumerate it. Enumerate each and every plant species as well as animal species that are present in a particular ecosystem, that will give your species composition. Species composition of that particular ecosystem. Now, so here, if you take a very simple example where a forest ecosystem, we can find vertical distribution. We can see grass, occupies the bottom layer, bottom strata of the forest ecosystem, above which you can find some hubs. Above which we can see some shrubs. Above which we can see tall trees. Okay, so this is how the vertical distribution of different species occupying different levels. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, different levels, and these levels, which finally leads to the vertical distribution of the different species occupying different levels, that we call it as a master of actions. And each level is called as strata, single strata. This is one strata, another, and finally. So here, for example, trees, tall trees, large trees, that will occupy the top vertical strata. Here in this diagram, you can find tall trees which is occupying the top level strata, right, or layer of the forest. If you take an example of the forest ecosystem, The vertical distribution goes like this, where the topmost strata is occupied by the trees, whereas the second, that is shrubs and herbs, and finally that is grasses. Look at here, shrubs, the second, herbs and grasses occupies the bottom layer. This is what we can see, grasses, herbs, shrubs and trees. This is what the vertical distribution takes place. Now, so here, these are all the functions of each and every ecosystem. In each and every ecosystem, we do find the presence of the producers that are going to produce a biomass or organic matter. By consuming the sunlight, performing photosynthesis, it will produce organic matter. That means plants, producers, productivity is there. Once it produces organic matter, it will pass its energy from one trophic level to another trophic level, and it finally consumes it, which leads to decomposition. And as the process of the decomposition is proceeding, we can find the transfer of the energy, flow of the energy, and that is called as energy flow. And there is a cycling of the nutrients, where once the organic matter which has been produced by the plants are consumed by the herbivores, from that the herbivores has been consumed by the carnivores, such that there is a cycling of the nutrients. So these are the functional units we can find in each and every ecosystem. Look at here, the components of the ecosystem are seen to function as a unit. It will function as a unit. Then we can consider the following aspects as productivity, decomposition, energy flow, nutrient cycling. We have to understand one after other. Now, to understand the ethos of an aquatic ecosystem, whether it is an aquatic ecosystem or the terrestrial ecosystem, all these functions will be common. Let us take a small pond as an example. Now, if you consider the pond is a shallow water body in which we can find all the mentioned aspects like productivity, because in a pond we can see the presence of the plants, that is in the form of hydroplants. We can see submerged plants, floating plants and rooted plants with the floating leaves, submerged form of leaves, all these submerged form of plants. So all this means we can find the vegetation as well as we can also find the animal system too, where the zooplanktons are present. Small fishes, large fishes, beetles, snakes, and these water snakes like starfishes. So some form of vegetation and some form of animals, that means zooplanktons, that means phytoplanktons, zooplanktons, and also decomposers are also present in the form of bacteria, fungi, microbes. Microbes are present which will helpful for dead and decaying matter, right? Now here we can see all the above mentioned functions like productivity, decomposition, energy flow and nutrient cycling. All this happens in a very small aquatic ecosystem, that is pond ecosystem. A abiotic component here in the pond, we can find the abiotic components like water, light, inorganic and organic dissolved form of nutrients, inorganic salts. These are all the abiotic factors, right? Soil, rocks. Abiotic component is the water, in which all the dissolved inorganic and organic substances are present. And we also find rich soil deposit at the bottom of the pond. So here we need to understand, we have taken a pond. Shallow water body, pond ecosystem. Okay. And here the abiotic factors are light, water, bottom we can see soil, which is rich in its nutrients. So all the soluble, inorganic and organic nutrients are all comes under abiotic factors. And even rocks, these are all abiotic factors, right? So here the solar input, that is the sunlight. Along with this, we do find the presence of free floating vegetation, rooted plants with floating leaves, right? We do find the presence of amphibians. We have small fishes, we have large fishes, we have small microbes, zooplanktons, phytoplanktons, and here we can see herbs, shrubs, and even presence of trees, right? So here, if you consider a small pond as an ecosystem, here in this ecosystem, we do find the presence of both biotic factors as well as abiotic factors. Non-living things are there and living things are there. By using the solar input, all the plants, producers which are present inside the ponds, they are going to perform photosynthesis and they are going to synthesize the biomass, what we call it as an organic matter. That is nothing but productivity. So here, look at here. The solar input, sunlight, right? Wait. Solar input, sunlight, the cycle of temperature, day length, and other climatic conditions regulate the rate of the functions of entire pool. Now, functions are nothing but its productivity, decomposition, energy flow, and as well as nutrient cycling. The autotrophic components includes phytoplanktons and some algae, and also floating as well as completely submerged. Floating and submerged and marginal plants. We can see over this margin of the pond, there is a growth of like rooted or floating, submerged or partially submerged plants. That we call it as a marginal plants, what we find at the edges. These are all form producers of the pond ecosystem. Now, and coming to the consumers, we know the plants will utilize the sun energy and they fix the energy, the sunlight, and they fix the energy by performing the photosynthesis. And that is what it is producing the organic matter. That organic matter has been transferred from the plants to the next level, that is herbivores. That is what the energy is flowing, where the ultimate source of the energy is sunlight. Consumers are represented by zooplanktons. Zooplankton, the free swimming as well as bottom dwelling forms. Freely swimming as well as amphibians, and we can find the dwelling forms. And the decomposers are nothing but microbes like bacteria, flagellates, fungi, especially which are very, very much abundantly present in the bottom of the pond. This is what we came to understand, that there is an existence of both the biotic and abiotic factor, and therefore the pond ecosystem is self-sustained. Now, this system performs all the functions. What are all the functions? Like it can produce, it can decompose, it can transfer the energy, and as well as it can include in the nutrient cycling, right? So the system performs the functions of all the ecosystem and of the biosphere as a whole, which includes conversion of inorganic and organic material with the help of radiant energy. What do you mean by radiant energy? Sunlight. Radiant energy of the sun by the autotrophs, that is producers, which can perform photosynthesis. Now, these autotrophs are being consumed by the consumers. So, consumption of autotrophs by heterotrophs. That means here energy transfer is taking place from one level to the next level, one trophic level to a next trophic level. And decomposition, mineralization of the dead matter to release them back for reuse and by the autotrophs. These events are repeatedly taking place. These events are repeated over and over again. So here, for example, consider the plant and a well-developed root system, right? So, from soil, it will absorb the nutrients as well as water, and by using sunlight, it will perform photosynthesis where it uses carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So, while the photosynthesis is happening, what is actually happening? It is fixing all the radiant energy that is coming from the sunlight that has been fixed, which leads to the production of organic matter, biomass, right? That means carbohydrates, and the carbohydrates is further stored in the form of starch in the plant system, that we already know. Now, these plants has been consumed by the next level of the ecosystem, that is the next trophic level, what we call it as the herbivores. Now, these herbivores has been taken up by a feed to the carnivores. What actually is happening here, the energy which has been fixed by the producers in the form of organic matter has been converting from one trophic level to the another trophic level. Whatever the initial biomass or the organic matter that has been fixed by the plants by performing photosynthesis by using the ultimate light energy, that is called as primary productivity. Now, this primary productivity, we can divide it into two types. What are they? Gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Whatever the amount of organic matter that has been produced by the plants by performing photosynthesis is called as gross, what we call it as a total, gross primary productivity. While performing photosynthesis, some of the catabolic process utilizes the energy from this gross primary productivity, and that used, what we call it as a used for the process of respiration, and what we call it as a respiration loss. So, the gross primary productivity minus respiratory loss, then we are going to get our net primary productivity. Let's understand this. So here, there is a unidirectional movement of energy towards the higher trophic level. That is what? First, the plants will fix energy, right, in the form of carbohydrates. This energy starts to flow in a unidirectional way, which finally reaches to the higher trophic levels, and its dissipation, dispersal, and as loss of heat to the environment. That is, finally it is going to lead to the process of decomposition, which leads to the loss of heat. Now, the constant input of solar energy, that means utilizing the solar energy, is a basic requirement for any ecosystem to perform and to perform its function, to do its function, and to sustain, to survive. The ultimate source, the ultimate energy is coming from the sunlight. Primary production, just now we discussed, Primary production is defined as an amount of biomass or organic matter produced per unit area over a time period by plants by performing photosynthesis. That is called as your primary production. If you calculate in terms per time, that means per day or per hour or per year, then that gives your primary productivity. Let's understand that. This primary production is measured in terms of the unit and it is expressed in terms of weight, gram per meter square. Or it is expressed in terms of energy, kilocalories per meter square. The rate of biomass production is productivity. Now, it is expressed in terms of, this has to be per time over a period of time. So, gram per meter square per year, we are representing per period of time, over a period of time. Same way, and it can also be expressed in terms of per meter square per year, that is per time. To compare, we are comparing by taking the time into consideration to compare different productivities of different ecosystem. Now, here, this thing we already have discussed. Just a glimpse. The primary productivity is divided into gross primary productivity, and net primary productivity. As we already know, whatever the amount of the biomass that has been produced by the plants by performing photosynthesis, that is called as gross primary productivity. While doing it, while living, while sustaining, the plant itself consumes amount of gross PPP. That means GPP, gross primary productivity. Look at here, primary productivity is divided into gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Gross primary productivity of an ecosystem is the rate of production of organic matter during photosynthesis. A plant is there, it performs photosynthesis and it produces organic matter, otherwise called as biomass. Whatever the organic matter which is produced by a plant by performing photosynthesis, the rate of production of organic matter during photosynthesis, that will give your gross primary productivity. Out of this gross primary productivity, a considerable amount of gross primary productivity is utilized by the plant itself during its respiration for catabolic process. So therefore, what is your net primary productivity? Net primary productivity, look at here, gross primary productivity minus respiration loss, which is represented by R. Gross primary productivity minus respiration losses. That is your net primary productivity. Simple. So here, net primary productivity is the actual available organic matter come to its next specific level. This is the available biomass for the consumption to the heterotrophs. Heterotrophs may be herbivores and decomposers. And the secondary productivity is defined as a rate of formation of new organic matter by the consumers. Taking the primary, that is primary the producers, whatever the organic matter that has been fixed by the consumers, that is your secondary productivity. So by this, we know what is primary productivity, what is gross primary productivity and net primary productivity, and secondary productivity. Secondary productivity is the rate of the formation of new organic matter by using the net primary productivity is coming from the autotrophs to the consumers. Now, Primary productivity, it all depends upon the plant species. It's a simple thing because plant perform photosynthesis and produces this primary productivity. If there are more vegetation, more plants, then more primary productivity. Inhabiting a particular area, and it also depends upon variety of environmental factors, because if there is a good amount of available nutrients and if there is a good capacity of performing the photosynthesis, then that plants will perform good rate of photosynthesis by utilizing the available nutrients and can fix good amount of primary productivity, right? Now, therefore, it varies in different types of ecosystem. The primary productivity keeps on varying from one ecosystem to another ecosystem. So now, the annual yearly net primary productivity of a whole biosphere is approximately 170 billion tons dry matter of organic matter, but out of which we can see of this, despite occupying though 70%, though the oceans occupy 70% of the surface, we can see the productivity that is happening in the oceans are only 55 billion tons. Remaining 115 billion tons is, of course, that is produced on the lands. That is the plants which are produced on the lands. Here the point is, though 70% of the land has been occupied by the ocean, as it is not, we cannot find the in the deep level of the ocean, vegetation is very, very less when compared to the vegetation that we find on the lands, right? Okay, this is it. So in this class, we have understood about what are all the functions that are performed by an ecosystem, which includes productivity, right? And decomposition, energy flow, and nutrient cycling. In this, we have discussed about the productivity in detail. In the coming up class, let's move ahead with the decomposition, energy flow, and as well as nutrient cycling. Until then, keep learning with vlearning. Thank you.